Hello, my name is Dr. Ben Wyrock, and I serve as Senior Director of Student Professional Development at CU Engineering. This video module is focused on the basics of interviewing. Though I will be referring mainly to interviewing for a job or internship, these same tips can be applied to interviews in any setting, including leadership opportunities, graduate school, or other interview processes. As a reminder, the Pro-Ready Initiative is a College of Engineering's commitment to career success for all students. We in the Career Services Office are dedicated to supporting the Pro-Ready mission and are here to serve students on their Pro-Ready path. So what are we going to talk about today? The first thing we'll do is talk about the purpose of the interview and the types of interviews that you may engage in and the kinds of preparation that you'll need to do. We'll also talk about interviewing basics and implementing a practice strategy to get you prepared. I think it's really important when it comes to interviewing to remember where you are in the job search. If you have landed an interview, you have probably done the work necessary to get to one of the final stages of the job search process. You've done your career exploration, you've built your online presence, you have a great resume and cover letter, and you've engaged in networking and attended career fairs. And now you're at really the final stage, which is the interview. So congratulations, you've done your job thus far. But now it's time to seal the deal. Now it's time to get that job or internship you've been looking for. So the purpose of the interview is for you to demonstrate your experience and to get to know if you're going to be the right fit and if the company is going to want to hire you and understand how you respond to certain situations. It'll also give an opportunity for you to learn more about company culture and job responsibilities to see if you might want to be part of that organization. So what should you be doing before you interview? The best way to get prepared is to do your research. You want to do research on the employer. You want to develop and practice interview questions and really have a good, deep understanding of the position in which you are applying for. So before the interview, you want to know some of the basics. If you are interviewing on site, you want to know where the location of the interview is and make sure that you budget plenty of time to travel to that particular destination. And if it's virtual, you want to know the details and the Zoom link or whatever. You also want to know who's attending. You'll also want to make sure that you have appropriate interview dress ready to go. Make sure that you're early, whether it be virtual or in person. And bring what you need in order to be successful in an interview, ranging from extra resumes to a pad folio or a notepad. There are different kinds of interviews, and depending on where you are in the job search process, you may be engaged in different kinds of interviews. One type of interview are screening interviews. This is usually at the beginning of the job search process where you have applied for a position or have sent in your resume and cover letter. And the screening interview is a way for the recruiter or the talent acquisition manager to evaluate your qualifications and gauge just kind of general interest, who you are as a person. These are often pretty short. It could be 15 to 30 minutes. Usually an hour is pretty long, but they're short, and it's a way for the employer to verify information and to sync that information up with what they see in your resume and cover letter. The second kind of interview are technical interviews, and this allows the employer to get to know your technical competencies. We will have a technical interview module, so make sure that you check that out. And then finally, in-person interviews or virtual interviews as well. And so the employer has already determined that you are qualified for the position, and now they're looking to see if you're going to be a right fit for the organization. This may be 30 minutes to an hour, but it may be more inclusive, and you may be meeting this. You'll start off the interview with an introduction, both your side and from the employer side, and just get to know you a little bit. And then they'll probe into your background and qualifications and learn a little bit more about your resume, learn a little bit more about your career goals and aspirations, and evaluate your interests and fit for the position. So what kinds of questions will be asked during an interview? More and more interviews, especially for general interviews, the questions are structured more in an open-ended format, or what we call behavioral-based questions. They'll ask you about a scenario or give you a hypothetical or ask about a time where you did something. They'll also ask you specific questions like why you did a particular thing, or closed-ended questions that are very short in nature that only have 1 or 2 word answers. This is a very brief sample of common interview questions. These are behavioral-based questions that you may run into in your interview experience. We have a full list of interview questions on the Engineering Career Services website for you to take a look at. In order for you to prepare for common interview questions, we encourage you to use this grid, which you can also find on the Engineering Career Services website. It allows you to do some pre-reflection of common interview questions. For example, oftentimes an employer will ask about leadership opportunities. So in order for you to prepare, you can reflect back upon when you've had leadership opportunity and sort of scribble out some notes on this grid, which will allow you to organize your thoughts. The best way to answer any type of behavioral-based or scenario-based interview is called the START method. It's an acronym. You want to set the scene or the situation for the answer in which you're giving. Describe the task or what happens. Describe the actions that you took or that your team took. And then as a result of those actions, what came of the situation? And finally, probably the most important, and the step that very few interviewees actually do, is tie it back to the original question or the job or the company. So as a result of the things that you did, how would it make an impact on that organization, or how would it tie into the position in which you're applying for? So here's an example of, tell me about a time where you managed multiple projects. The situation was I had multiple projects on the same day. The task, I was researching the presentation and trying to also help my supervisor's boss. The action is what you did to prioritize those particular tasks. The result is what happens, and the tie back is what you learned or the knowledge gained. Same thing as the grid that I showed before. Behavioral-based questions can also, you can practice those and start to reflect on those particular questions using this grid, which you can find on the Engineering Career Services website. Make sure that you have questions for the employer. This typically will be the last question that the interviewer will ask you. If you don't have questions for the employer, it's a signal that you are not prepared and not particularly serious for this specific job. So make sure that you always have 2 to 3 questions ready to go. It is an opportunity for you to show how much research you've done on a company or an organization by asking questions rooted in research. I like to review a company's website and social media platforms to take a look at what has been most important, critical, or salient to that company within the past 3 to 6 months. So make sure that you have some questions ready for the employer. After the interview, make sure that you follow up within 24 hours with a thank you email by recalling what you talked about, reiterating your interests. If there was something that the employer asked you to do or to follow up with, make sure that you include that, and to be professional. We have some templates or models of thank you emails on the Engineering Career Services website for you to refer to. So how do you increase your confidence? Being in an interview can be nerve-wracking for a lot of people, and even though you should remember that you got to this point because the employer deems you to be qualified based on your credentials and your resume and cover letter, you want to make sure that your confidence is high. The best way is to practice, to get practice and repetition. This is not a skill that we typically put into practice on a daily basis, the act of interviewing. And so there's a number of ways to practice through mock interviewing and through some of our online modules. Also make sure to know that you are also interviewing the employer and getting a sense of whether or not you'd want to work for them. So our final tips: smile and engage. Be a positive, engaging person in the interview setting. Don't necessarily feel rushed to answer right away. Take a moment to reflect upon the question that is asked of you. You'll do much better in answering the question if you take a moment to think instead of trying to think of the answer while you're talking. If you're engaged in virtual interviews, make sure that your environment is clean and well organized, that you're using a professional Zoom background, and that your internet connection is solid. And again, make sure to practice, practice, practice. Our engineering career services team is here to help you with basics of interviewing by emailing, calling, stopping into the Engineering Success Hub, pinging us through live chat, and visiting our website, colorado.edu/engineering/career, for all of the resources and more that I had covered. Thank you very much for your time today. Best of luck to you in your interview.